Good morning, and what a great privilege it is to follow that story, that inspiring story from Joe and the team at Shepparton College about how they harness the opportunities that emerge from the COVID-19 experience. I'm going to scale up Joe's message a little bit and talk about our learnings from a systemic level. To provide some context, the department provides education services across about 1/6 of the Australian landmass, but to only about 1% of the Australian population. So we're a relatively small system, we're very spread out, very remote and very isolated. More than a third of our schools have less than 50 students, and nearly half of our students identify as Aboriginal. The Northern Territory, as you've heard, has been extremely privileged to have escaped so far some of the more extreme interruptions caused by COVID-19. From an education perspective, we've been able to deliver uninterrupted learning for our students, and we were the first Australian jurisdiction to return to compulsory face-to-face learning from the start of Term 2. But we have experienced some profound impacts from COVID-19 and had to respond accordingly. Perhaps the most profound impact was the implementation of biosecurity zones in the first half of the year throughout most of the Northern Territory, which locked most of our staff, students and their families into their remote communities for an extended period of time. In response, we facilitated the delivery of thousands of essential items, including medicines, food, cleaning and hygiene supplies to our schools and to our staff. And we also developed a remote community schools package to incentivise our employees staying in their remote communities through their holiday periods, because the challenge was if they had left, they wouldn't have been able to get back in to resume teaching. So how did we do this and what did we learn? Well, we set up a dedicated emergency management task force, and we established strong governance and an authorising environment to facilitate regular communication, rapid movement of staff and resources, and collaboration of teams and staff at all levels. And this is how we did it. We created a dual operating system based on Cotter's model, which established a voluntary network model to bring the right knowledge, the right resources and the agility to get the right work done at the right time. Silos were broken down and perceptions were shifted. The old bureaucracy was still there, but it was very much in the background. The work was getting done in those voluntary networks and outside of the hierarchy. Now, this was driven by crisis, by urgency and by a sense of agency across the organisation. And yet it wasn't the chaos that some feared it might be. The department's structured and very responsive emergency management committee ensured that good governance practices remained and that decisions were driven by data and by evidence. So the success of this quickly led us to thinking about what opportunities this way of working presented for some of our other work, for our old problems. We saw a window of opportunity to do some new thinking and some innovative work while no one was watching, while the expected ways of working were taking a holiday. So we hopped to it. Using this model, we made significant inroads and headway into one of our intractable problems, student attendance and engagement. We established a task force called Own Our Own and gave them the authorisation to pull together whatever they needed. That task force rapidly redirected resources to the project and to make sure that leaders at all levels in schools, in regional offices and in the central office paid attention to the problem. They broke the problem down and they monitored the data through twice-weekly meetings, much like our COVID task force had done. The results of that were that in Term 2, that task force identified 3,500 students who had been attending at the start of Term 1, but we didn't see them back at school at the start of Term 2 when we resumed compulsory schooling. Through the task force's work, 93% of those students were re-engaged by the end of Term 2. In Term 3, that task force turned its attention to longer term problems, students at risk of disengagement and those who are already chronically disengaged. By the end of Term 3, nearly 1,500 of the at-risk students and 122 chronically disengaged students had been reconnected with their education. So what has COVID taught us about leadership? Well, when I'm thinking about this, I'm quite taken by this quote from Tony Blair, which is nearly 20 years old now, and it dates back nearly 20 years to just after the September 11 attacks, when global uncertainty was very high, as it was earlier this year. He said, "This is a moment to seize. The kaleidoscope has been shaken. The pieces are in flux. Soon they will settle again. But before they do, Let us reorder this world around us. When reflecting on that, I'd say that every good idea has its day. We've all got something in our bottom drawer that's never quite had the authorising environment to give it a go. But maybe as we emerge into a new COVID normal world, now's the time to pull that idea out of the bottom drawer.